Hello. So, I was recently intrigued by the Huda Beauty Ube birthday cake, the purple powder that they came out with. And I saw a lot of different people review this and say that it was too purple. So, I thought that maybe this would be something that I would like since a lot of the pink powders that I've had, I was a little bit sad that they weren't pink enough. So this will be a review of the Huda Ube powder comparison with the cherry blossom cake powder, and then also a comparison with some other pink powders that I have. And also a little bit of an update with the Pat McGrath pink powder that I've had and the Westman Atelier powder that I've had for a while. So hopefully this won't be too long and hopefully this will be informative. But let's go ahead and get started with the purple powder. So as I'm sure you've seen in other reviews, this is very vibrant purple. And let's go ahead and open this up and compare it to some others. Or actually, before we get to that, let me talk a little bit about the packaging because as much as I like the older Huda packaging better, I think that this one is more convenient, and I really like how they did the lid, how it has the part that presses into the mesh built into the lid, rather than the old one that you have the separate piece. Like, it's annoying to have to open this up and then take the tab out as well and then get into the powder. So I really like that it's all, the cap is kind of all in one with those two pieces. But I will say I do think that this original packaging feels more luxe. It's a heavier weight plastic, and there's just something about the design of it that just looks and feels very nice and high end. Whereas the newer one does feel like a lighter weight plastic. Instead of a clear plastic, it's, I guess, a little bit frosted. But for some reason, the look and feel of it just, it feels not very luxe. But I do think that this is going to be a more convenient and practical packaging. So I'm kind of fine with it either way. I do like the look and feel of this one better. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the colors of these powders next to each other, and then I'll do some swatches as well. And I think what you'll notice as I go through these is just how vibrant of a pink. I mean, this is more of a purple, but just how vibrant of a color we're getting in this ube powder, because previously this cherry blossom cake from Huda Beauty was the pinkest powder, the most vibrant and saturated powder that I had out of everything. And that was kind of one of my issues with the Pat McGrath powder, which I think you can see how much I've used of that now, was this one in swatches and in usage is less pink than this one. This is still my favorite powder by far. Just a quick update. I will be repurchasing this once I get through some of my other powders, but this is easily my favorite setting powder. So if you're looking for a recommendation, that is my recommendation. I did also get a small sample of the OneSize powder. Actually, let me leave that here so we can see what this is. This is actually more pigmented than the Huda Beauty powder, but I don't like it. It's very thick, and it goes on in a way that I don't enjoy. It creases on me in a weird way. It's just not for me for whatever reason. So I don't know why exactly, but I don't love it. Now, the Westman Atelier powder, I don't like it as much as the Pat McGrath powder. It's a good powder, but it just doesn't give me the setting ability or the finish of the Pat McGrath powder, so I don't like this one as much, and I am struggling to use it up. partially because I don't like it as much as the Pat McGrath powder, but also partly because it's just hard to get into the pan with my brushes. The pan is kind of set into the compact, and it's just been hard to get my brushes in there, and I kind of feel like I'm tearing up my brushes a little bit getting out that product. Um, so yeah, and then the elf, I dug this out. I'm not even sure where this was. My little sister helped me find this. I haven't been using it. I don't love it. It's a beautiful powder, but it has no setting ability on me, and it is a little bit more peach than these other powders, so it doesn't work as well for my undertone. It can look a little bit weird on my skin tone because you'll end up seeing that peach a little bit. This is actually the Charlotte Tilbury. Is this the air? Which one is it? It's whatever this, whatever this says. I think it's the airbrush setting powder. I know that she has a few different powders though, and I'm not entirely sure which one this is. My mom gave this to me. I gave my mom the yellow Pat McGrath powder, and she gave me this. This is actually a similar formula to the Pat McGrath, or at least the way that it goes onto the skin, I should say. It's a different formula, but it sits similarly on my skin. But they don't have a color that works for me. So I added this in here because it's a setting powder. And then we have my last one over here, the Florasis. This isn't a setting powder, it's a finishing powder, and it has a green side and a pink side. So now I have all of these opened up. So hopefully you can see, in comparison with all of these other ones, this is very vibrant and saturated and the least white, you know? And that's been my problem with a lot of the pink setting powders. Even if they work for me, they'll show up a little bit lighter than I like. Now I don't have that issue with the Huda Cherry Blossom. I actually don't have that issue with the Pat McGrath in usage, even though these look fairly light. I do have that issue with any white setting powder with a peachy powder like this. You know, I do get some weird. This doesn't look white on me, but it looks like I have something on my face. So I think that has more to do with the formulation than the color, but you know, I just never know when it comes to these things. So let's go ahead and swatch these next to each other just to see in person or like on the skin, what does this look like? So this is Ube. Let's do this next to, so this is the Cherry Blossom cake, and this is the Ube cake. Oh, and by the way, these two smell the same. I remember when I was watching reviews and people were talking about how great this smells, and you know, maybe this smells like ube or something. And I love like a good ube bubble tea, and I was really hopeful that this was going to smell like an ube bubble tea or something. It doesn't. It smells exactly like this one. So if you were wondering, like I was, they smell the same. They smell lovely. It's like it's kind of a cherry-ish smell. I don't have a very good way of describing it, but it smells really nice. If you like something like Tom Ford's Lost Cherry, but something that's like not as strong and something that smells maybe a little bit more natural, you'll probably like this. I think that there's also a fragrance-free option. I don't think this one comes in it, but this one should. And I should probably pick that one up instead, but I do like how these smell. But I thought I would say that in case anyone else was curious about that. So anyway, so this is the Ube one, and this is the Cherry Blossom. And you can see on my fingers how the Cherry Blossom really reads as white on my finger, while the Ube is still very white, but it has a little bit more of a purple lilac color. Like there's a color to it. It's not just a white powder on my skin. Hopefully that's clear. But it's still very white at the end of the day. At the end of the day, these are all setting powders. A lot are, actually, I don't know if most of these are talc based. These two are. So I always think of talc as just being predominantly white no matter what you do with it. And as you can see, it really just blends into the skin. Now I'm going to try to build these up a little bit, but I want you to see how that blends in. And I bring this up because I've seen a lot of people review this saying, wow, this makes my face look purple. Or I could use this as a purple powder blush, like a loose powder blush. And I think that's reaching quite a bit. Honestly, I think if this is showing up on your skin tone, it's a good indication that you have a warm undertone and that this is too cool toned for you. Because as you can see, like I'm just going to go back and forth and layer these up. And I tried to do this on my face too. I attempted to use this as a loose powder blush, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. There isn't enough pigment in there. So unless you are very warm toned, I don't. Even if you're really fair, I don't think this is going to show up on you. It's just there just isn't enough pigment there, and I'm trying to like go into the lid here and like pick up more, just try to layer this up. And here's the thing, I think when a lot of people were reviewing the Ube color originally from Huda, they got it in PR, and they got it in PR with the Ube blush. Okay, I lost track of how many layers that was, but it's like at least 4 layers. And like maybe if I like turn this in just the right lighting, you can see like maybe a little bit of purpliness in that stripe, but I also think that I'm just like trying to find it and it's not actually there. But I think a lot of people were reviewing this for the first time, first putting on the liquid blush and then putting this on top of it. And I think that maybe tricked them into thinking that a lot of the color that was coming from the blush was maybe coming from this. And I've worn this a few times by now, by the way. This isn't an initial impression. I've worn this. And it just blends into my skin. I actually can't tell the difference between these two. If I try to pile both of these onto my skin, the cherry blossom cake will start looking a little bit white on me. Just a little bit, not a lot. And this won't. So this one is probably a little bit better suited for my skin tone. And I'm a light medium skin tone, by the way. Very saturated skin tone though, so sometimes lighter things don't work very well for me, or they'll show up very white on my skin. But I do think that for most people, if you're using this as a setting powder and you're not trying to pack this on, you probably won't be able to see a huge difference between these two. Now, if you're someone who, like me, struggles with having powders that are too white, and if this one shows up as too white on you, you might want to try this one out. This might work much better for you. Now, if you're someone who already has issues with things showing up pink on them, these might not be for you. It kind of confuses me that a lot of people on YouTube will try to use pink powders or purple powders on any skin tone for brightening. And these work well on my skin tone because I have a very cool undertone and I have olive skin. I have an olive skin tone. And so the olive skin tone makes everything turn orange on me if it has any sort of orange pigment in it. If it has any sort of warmth, it goes very orange on me. And then that doesn't match with my cool undertone. So I need things like this. And these brighten on my skin tone because they kind of help cancel out any redness in my skin, any warmth in my skin. They kind of help hide that. And they don't have any warmth in them themselves. Or if they do, it's incredibly minimal and doesn't show up on my skin. But if you are, I don't know, even neutral to warm, these might not work for you. You know what, I'll even go as far to say if a white translucent setting powder works for you, just use that. You don't need these. If you don't have issues with a white powder showing up, a white on your skin, or looking weird on your skin, these might not be for you. And that's okay. And I say that because every time a really cool toned product comes to market, I see all of these really weird or negative reviews or people using it in weird ways because it doesn't work for them. And I noticed this like the last time that I remember seeing this was when Natasha Denona's Xenon palette came out. And there's probably been other things, but that's the first thing I think of. And everyone said it was like, oh, it was a gray palette, and like who would use this? And it's supposed to be a smoky palette, but isn't it go dark enough? And you know what? That's the perfect neutral palette for me because I have a very cool undertone and because I have an olive undertone, and it's a blue based gray palette. So it's not for everyone. And in the same way, this isn't for everyone. But for the people that it is for, it's going to work really, really well. So if you're like me and you struggle with setting powders being too white, and if you know you have a cool undertone, or if you struggle with things looking too warm on you, I think you might really like this. And if you don't have that problem, just stick with your regular setting powders. You don't need this. You don't necessarily need this. It's not going to work for everyone, is what I'm trying to say. But other than the color and everything, it is exactly like the Cherry Blossom powder. It seems to be the same formulation, and I do like it quite a lot. I don't know if I need to keep both of these in my collection, and frankly, I need to go through and sort of weed out a lot of my powders because I really do prefer the Pat McGrath powder. Now, sometimes the way that I use these powders is these ones on the outside I'm kind of just trying to use up. The Pat McGrath powder I want to repurchase whenever I can get it on sale. And then the Huda powder, I won't usually use these on their own. I don't enjoy using these on their own because they're a little bit drying, or I should say dehydrating on my skin. My skin gets easily dehydrated. I have oily, dehydrated skin. So what I do is I use the Pat McGrath powder, and then sometimes I'll use the Huda powder on top because it's a better setting powder in that it really will set your makeup. Like your makeup will not budge if you're using this. But if I use these on their own, they're less comfortable on my skin, whereas the Pat McGrath is always very, very, very comfortable on my skin. And the pink powder looks good on my skin. I had previously had the issue of the white powder and the yellow powder, and I think I tried the medium powder as well. They just all looked wrong on my skin. The yellow one looked yellow, kind of like this. This is a similar color to the yellow one. The medium one looked orange on my skin, and the white one looked white on my skin. So yeah, but I really love this. But it's not the most, it doesn't have the most setting power of the powders that I've tried. It's a very soft setting powder, and I love that because it's super comfortable. But I can layer these on top, and these will help set my makeup even more. Like if I'm trying out a liquid concealer or foundation, I'll usually use these. If I'm just using powder foundation, powder products, I'll generally just stick with Pat McGrath. So that's kind of how I use these. All the other things in here, the OneSize, Westman Atelier, the e.l.f. I'm going to give away to someone. The Charlotte Tilbury I'll probably give away to someone as well. And the Florasis, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with yet, but they're not my favorites. Really, Pat McGrath reigns supreme, and then I really like having either one of these for a nice little extra bit of setting powder on top. But in testing the Ube, I did use this by itself. I did put this all over my face. I also tried really, really hard to build it up so that I could see if it really did go purple on me, and it didn't. And I would say if it is going purple on you, it's probably just not for your skin tone. You're probably too warm toned. You'll probably do better with many of the other Huda Beauty setting powder colors. Like this comes in so many different colors. You'd probably do better with like a peach or something. My little sister has the peach one of these and she loves it. So yeah, I hope, well, I guess I didn't swatch everything. Should we go through and swatch everything? The problem with swatching setting powders is unless I really, really, really build them up, they kind of just look like nothing on my skin. But I guess I already have these out. Let's swatch them, because I know people are going to want that. But also I can barely, like, I can't tell in the camera where I swatched these. I can sort of barely tell in person where I've swatched these two. Maybe let's shake this up. One thing I have noticed with this is it's a little bit harder to get out powder. But I think it's just because this is new and I haven't destroyed the mesh yet. There we go. There's a lot of powder. Here, we're just gonna lay the powder on top. I think that's what I did for my last review. I really just like laid the powder on top and kind of tapped it in. There you go. You can see that. That way you can see what these look like on a skin tone. But please be aware that, like, I am trying very hard to get this to show up on my skin. And it does not naturally do that. Let's do that with this one. And if I remember correctly, pretty much everything else is just going to look like white powder on my skin. And by comparison with the Huda Ube, the cherry blossom powder also looks white on my skin. But honestly, they still look like pretty white powders. You know, at the end of the day, most setting powders, or pretty much every setting powder I've ever seen, it's a white powder with some kind of tint in there. Or it's just a white powder. So let's compare this with my beloved Pat McGrath. I'm just gonna, as you can see, it's just like a white powder. There we go. I'm not gonna blend that in. I'm just gonna leave that there for you. And you can see how the Pat McGrath powder, when I'm laying it on my skin like this, it looks more white than the cherry blossom cake. And I remember that from my last review too. So please be aware, I'm just trying to show you sort of the difference in pigment colors in these. And this isn't necessarily reflective of how it's going to look on your skin. Because when I wear these two, I don't think I see a difference in pigment on my skin. Okay, so let's come around to the OneSize. And this one was disappointing for me because it is very pigmented in the pan, and you can see here, you see how pink that is? Like, this is, like, just from this exercise, the OneSize is as pink as the ube is purple. Like, the cherry blossom cake is not as pink as the OneSize. So I really wish this formula worked for me. There's something about it that gets very cakey and creasy and just weird on my skin. But man, look at that color. If I could get that formula to work, that would look great. If you like this formula, let me know how you use it. Maybe I'm using it wrong. Because I really do love the color. I love how saturated the color is in that. All right, let me wipe off my fingers. Okay, so going to the Westman Atelier, I'm probably going to have trouble getting this up. I do feel like as time goes on, this gets more and more, it's harder to pick up out of the pan. I don't know if more dry is the right word, but it's just, it's more crumbly too. It's just not the easiest powder for me to work with. But you see how that kind of looks like a white powder. It's kind of in the same range as the cherry blossom cake and the Pat McGrath. It's, you know, the same level of color as those two. And then Let's see if I can get a comparison here. I think that this looks about the same on the skin. Ooh. Okay, this one wants to run away. Yeah, it looks pretty white. I don't even necessarily see peachiness there. It's just very white. Let's see, and I know Charlotte Tilbury isn't a pink powder, but let's compare it just because I have it out here. I do think this is a very nice formula, but it just doesn't work for my skin tone. And I guess in here it looks like it should work for my skin tone because it's blending in with my skin. This does turn a little bit yellowy, a little bit orangey on me, but it's right there, by the way. But that is very difficult to see. All right, and then the last one here is from Florasis. This is the pink side of the powder, and it is very white. And so that's everything all together. This is the Huda Beauty Ube powder, the Huda Beauty Cherry Blossom powder, the Pat McGrath pink powder, the OneSize, it's like ultimate pink powder, I think. And then this one is the Westman Atelier pink powder, the e.l.f. pink powder, the Charlotte Tilbury, I believe this is a medium, or 2. Yeah, 2 medium. And then the Florasis pink and green powder. I forget exactly what it was called. So you can see everything here, aside from the Charlotte Tilbury, is kind of like there's mostly white powders here. And really the standout ones are from, in terms of pigment, are from Huda Beauty, the Ube powder, and then OneSize pink powder. So, and everything else looks pretty white on me. There isn't a huge variation in color there. Really, the 2 standouts are from the new purple powder from Huda and then the OneSize pink powder. But aside from the Charlotte Tilbury, most of these look pretty similar on my face. It's just whether or not I like the formula. The formula is really what makes these look great or bad on my skin. It's just, I think in order for a formula to do its best on me, it needs to be in the right color range. It needs to have the right undertone. So that's part of why I don't like this one. Great formula, not the right color for me. The e.l.f. one is not quite the right formula for me. I think this would be excellent for people who have drier skin than me, which is probably going to be most people. I think it's a powder you're going to have to work with a little bit more than some of the higher end formulas. But for the price point, I do think that this is a really lovely powder that gives you a bit of a glow and doesn't look super mattifying. I think that's what you usually get in drugstore powders, is they're just very matte looking. And this, if you work with it a bit, not on my skin, but on my friend's skin, who she likes this a lot, it gives you a really nice glow. But I will be getting rid of this. The Westman Atelier, I will use this up, but I haven't been super happy with it, especially for the price point. I think at the time this was the only compact pink powder on the market, and I think I had tried out all of the other ones in person and wasn't super happy about them. The only other contestants when I was picking out this one were 2 loose powders, and it was these 2 loose powders. And now that I've tried them out, I don't know if I would like having the Huda by itself. I don't think I would. I don't know if I would choose the Westman Atelier over this at this point, though. This would be hard to choose from because I don't like using either one of these by itself. This one's more comfortable. This one looks better on my skin. if I had to choose between these, knowing what I know now, I'd probably go with the Huda, but it would be a little bit uncomfortable for me to wear on my skin. But the price point for this is just too high. But I will be using this up, but I won't be repurchasing, and I don't necessarily recommend it. It's not a bad product, but for the price point, you could basically get two, or at least two, of anything else that I've shown here for the price of one of these. The compact is very nice, very luxe, though. I will be keeping the compact and reusing that for something. The OneSize, again, tell me if you figured out how to use this. I feel like I'm using this wrong, but the formula might just not be for my skin. It's just a little bit too thick and it looks weird on my skin. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep on playing with that. Florasis, this is a really nice finishing powder, and I think it was nice to use with the Westman Atelier when it wasn't necessarily giving me the best finish, even though it gave me decent setting power. But now that I have the Pat McGrath setting powder, that gives me, it's a setting powder, but it also gives me a finish that I really like. I really haven't had a need for this. So this is another thing where this is actually a really nice product, and I do recommend this. Although I don't think that Florasis sells this one anymore. I don't think that they sell this colorway anymore. This is nice, but I just don't have a use for it anymore. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this. We'll see. I don't know if maybe I'll see if one of my friends wants it. And then, again, Pat McGrath, I really love this. I love this so much. I'm so happy she came out with this in pink. I will be repurchasing this, either if I find it on a really, really good deal, or after I finish the Westman Atelier one. And as you can see, I've been trying to use up the Westman Atelier while I'm using this up, and I have not been doing a very good job. I always reach for this one instead. So I really like this one. It really gives me a beautiful finish, and I have not found an issue personally with how light colored this is, even though it does show up very white on my skin when I swatch it out like this. I don't have that issue on my face. Now, it would not surprise me if someone who has a deeper complexion than me does have that issue. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this comparison, and why I wanted to get this powder from Huda Beauty. So I really like these. These are all three that I would consider repurchasing. These are fantastic. Again, this is kind of my one and done setting powder. I don't need another powder in addition to this, but when I'm working with liquid or cream products, it is sometimes really helpful to have a super setting powder like these two, because otherwise my oily skin can kind of cause cream and liquid products to move around or crease, so these help me a lot. So yeah. Overall, I do recommend this. I just don't think this color is going to work for everyone, but that's part of the reason why Huda has this in so many different colors. I do recommend this formula, but please do find the color that works for you. Don't just don't just buy this because your favorite influencer got this in PR. The purple is interesting, and I know people like wacky colors for things. Setting powder is one of those areas where, unless you're doing something really artistic, which I don't think most of us do on a daily basis, just go with a setting powder that works for your skin tone. This does work for my skin tone, and actually I'm really appreciative at Huda for giving cooler toned options, because frankly most brands will kind of half-ass a pink powder and call it a day. This is the first time I'm seeing a purple powder. That isn't to say that hasn't been done before. I'm just not aware of it, and I really appreciate it. And honestly, I think it'd be really cool if Pat McGrath came out with a purple powder too. I could see that working really, really well in this formula. So hopefully this answered some of your questions. If not, please feel free to ask them below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope this was informative, And thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.